Hello and welcome once again to my Studio Chronicles. Today I have a couple of things that I want to share. One is that I have started two watercolors side by side and I'm painting them on these cradled birch boards, which are very nice and sturdy, and I'm comparing two different grounds. One of them is just a plain acrylic gesso like you would use on any canvas. I have applied the gesso with a roller, so there's a little bit of texture on this. And the other one that I'm comparing that to, I have applied a Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to be doing watercolors on these. I've done it before. I have no problem with watercolor on gesso, and I even have a way of varnishing this so that I won't need to put it under glazing, plexiglass or glass. For that, you might have to tune in next week. Today, I'm simply going to show you side by side what it's like to apply watercolor to these types of gesso ground. At the end of this segment, in my tools section, I'm going to be sharing a way that you can keep your canvases up off of a ledge or up off of your easel so that when you're painting around the edges of a cradled canvas, you won't get your easel all wet, or in this case, my ledge doesn't get wet. It's a very clever workaround, and I think it will be useful for a lot of people who paint on gallery wrapped canvases. So I'll show you that at the end. Stick around. Okay, so here are my side-by-side boards. On the left, it has been covered with Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground. Here's an example of Daniel Smith's product. It's kind of pricey, and I'll tell you what it was like to apply it in just a minute. On the right is just some generic gesso. Both of these have dried more than 24 hours, which is required by the Daniel Smith product. You have to let it dry 24 to 48 hours or it will begin to pick up the white into your paint as you're painting. So you want to make sure that the Daniel Smith product is cured. I'm using mostly Daniel Smith paints here. This is my little travel palette, but for paintings this size, it has all my favorite colors in it, so it will be more than adequate. I'm going to drop in a photo reference. I've used this one before, and I'm using it again just because it's familiar to me. It has all the bright colors that I love. So I'm familiar with all of these colors from previous sketches. Here I'm going right in. On the right, I have labeled this the gesso covered board. It has a little bit of a rough texture because I used a roller, a paint roller, to apply the gesso. On the left, the board with the Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground is a little bit smoother, so the application of paint is slightly different. I'm not measuring brush stroke for brush stroke as I'm putting down color, but I'm trying to use some basically similar strokes and quantities of paint to paper ratio, quantities of paint and water ratio. So I'm trying to work fairly saturated. And both of these really work nicely. It's different from working on paper, but then again, different types of paper work differently. So this is just a matter of learning how to put enough paint with not very much water to get this much saturation, but it lays down quite beautifully on both of these products. I really feel like there is very little difference between the two products, the ground versus gesso. About the only difference is the way that I applied them. But I like each one. I kind of like the roughness on the right. It has a little bit of texture. It's kind of unique. On the left, it's very smooth. It's not shiny, so it doesn't give me a feeling of lifting as easily as it would if it were a gloss. It's quite absorbent, but it stays on top of the substrate quite nicely. It doesn't sink in. It would certainly, the paint would sink in on this substrate if it didn't have some type of gesso or something to hold the paint on top. Certainly, if it were just plain wood, it would soak right in. But this is it isn't paper. It doesn't work just like paper, but it's quite delightful, and it's remarkable in that there's very little preparation that needs to be done. Just gesso the piece, and when I'm finished, hopefully next week, I will be able to show you a way that I can varnish this, hopefully without smearing, without reconstituting the dried watercolor, and it will be ready to hang. I can wire it and hang it without needing to put it under plexiglass. By the end of this session, I feel like I have good side-by-side sketches done. You will see that by the end of today. But at the same time, there is a little bit more that I want to do to these compositions, including experimenting with how well color lifts and how well I can manipulate the color once it's dry. That is something I'm very excited to show you next week. So I hope you will tune in. In fact, I'd love to have you subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to my channel. Just hit the subscribe button down below, and if you hit the little bell, you will be notified by email when I put new content up, which I do quite often. I am in the habit right now of putting new videos up on Thursdays, my Studio Chronicles, but I sometimes throw out a little bit of a video or a short in between Thursdays. So if you subscribe, you'll be notified. As I said, I'm working back and forth. On the left is my Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground. You can see it written on the paper just above the birch board. And on the right is a gesso. I use a Utrecht gesso. I like it because it's a little bit absorbent. I like the absorbency. Some gessos I have used seem to be glossy, or a little bit glossy. I would say at least a satin finish, and I prefer the absorbency, especially when I'm working in watercolor. I was surprised one time I did a side-by-side comparison of several gessos, and there is quite a variety of absorbency once they're dry. Some feel like they're matte, and they don't exactly drink in the color, but they hold the color a little bit better than the ones that are shiny. So if I'm working particularly wet into wet, for instance, watercolor, if I'm working with a lot of water, it can bead up on a shiny surface. So I like this gesso. I'm painting with a Chinese calligraphy brush. I really like these brushes. I like to hold them sort of in the back of the brush and dance them around with color. I am a fairly loose painter, and so you can see I'm holding these back a ways on the handle, and I suppose the brush is roughed up a bit working on gesso, or this ground is pretty smooth when it's dry, but excuse me, you know, I'm concerned that the gesso, especially when it's been applied with some texture like this, could be a little hard on precious watercolor sable brushes, for instance. I seldom pull out my sables. I like to have the freedom of kind of using my tools and brushes however I want to, you know, using them roughly, throwing them around a bit, you know, they're not precious. I don't like the feeling of being precious with my tools. It constrains me or something. It makes me tighten up, and who needs that? From here on out, I'm going to speed up my process a little bit by the magic of editing, so that you don't have to watch this entire watercolor, or these two watercolors, unfold in real time. It just takes time, and I don't think you want to watch paint dry. So I'm going to speed this up a bit, and at the end of this reel, I will be showing you in close-ups. I'll be comparing the texture of these two supports so that you can see side by side close-ups of the texture. The paintings will not be entirely finished. I will be coming back another day to do some edits, some lifting, some rearranging of form and color. So I'll have that ready for next week. But here we go. I'm going to not talk through this. I will just show you as I work for the next few minutes on this process. in real time, this has taken me about 45 minutes to do these 2 watercolors. They aren't finished, as I said before. I look forward to showing you some additions and subtractions that I make to them next week. Here in a minute, I'm going to be showing you some close-ups. First, I'm going to show you the Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground. This is the watercolor ground on birch plywood, and I'm going to take you in for a tighter shot so that you can see it's a smooth application. It's a very nice surface. I like it. And this is the gesso, the Holbein gesso, and this is the tight shot. You can see the texture. I like the effect. It's something a little bit different and unique. What do you think? In our tools segment today, I want to show you these square pieces of wood that my dad sawed on his table saw for me. He made me a whole pile of these. They're 4 by 4 inch pieces of scrap wood, and I want you to see what I do with them. So here we go with these squares of scrap wood, thin plywood. I put them on the corner of the canvas on the back, and I leave them hang over about 1 inch in each direction, and I put a couple of staples in. So you can see just a couple of staples into the wood, and when it's finished, I've got 4 corners, and they stand up off of my easel or my ledge. No matter which direction I turn the canvas, it will stand up off of the ledge and I can paint around it. Here's another view of it. There are just a couple of staples through the scrap wood into the back of the canvas, and it's very easy to pop off when you're finished. It can be recycled. So here I've pulled these off, and you can see the staples through them, and this is how I remove the staples. It's very easy. I simply take one piece of wood with the staples in it, put it up against the next one, and I press with my thumbs to pop the staples up so that I can grab a hold of them with my pliers. So they have popped up just enough by putting pressure on the piece of wood against the next piece of wood, and I can grab the staple and remove it. And I can use these. As you can see, I've used them over and over again. So very easy. Pop and grab the pliers and remove the staples. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to more videos on upcoming Thursdays. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your subscribing, and do let me know if you have special requests. I love to paint. I am continuously doing all kinds of things here in my studio, and I like to share them. So stay in touch, and I'll see you next week.